I'm gonna back us up just a few pages from where we left off the other day because I kind of glossed over some of this by talking about, they get out to sea and they suddenly realize they can talk freely about the charters and such. And I want to pick up with. No, it wasn't that far back. Just had it. Yeah, 299. 298. Touchstone says, I don't know how much I can tell you because it involves the great charters. Where do I start? Because previously, he's not been able to say anything about the great charters. And neither has Mogget. Let me pause for a moment because I've got quizzes to get back. I'll just get these back on Wednesday. So he mentions the queen. He said, she had 4 children. Oldest son was Roger, however you want to pronounce his name. And he says, he was always the leader, etc. He had ideas. We always followed him. He said, he went away and he came back just before the Midwinter Festival. One late afternoon, I was on duty guarding the queen and her ladies. They were playing some game. Roger came to her, asked to come with him down to the place where the great stones are. And he says, I can say it. He suddenly realizes he can now speak for her before he couldn't. Margaret says, yeah, sea washes, all things clear. Now we can speak of the great charters. That's when Sabriel should say, drop anchor, let's get it, all out in the open. But she doesn't. She does say, let's take advantage while we can. Okay, so she says the great stones that she remembers the little girl talking about in the little nursery rhyme. Those are the stones of the mortar, right? The stones and mortar of the rhyme. They're the 3rd and 5th great charters. Touchstone, yes. And the wall. Notice Touchstone knows about the wall. He remembers the wall, okay? People, or whatever they were who made the great charters, put 3 in bloodlines, 2 in physical constructions. Physical constructions, the wall, and the great stones, okay? Only the great stones. The lesser stones, the lesser charter stones aren't great stones, all right? So, the 3 bloodlines, we've already talked about. The royalty, the line of Abhorsons. This is a genetic thing. You're born with this. Read 2 and 3, and you'll figure that out. And then the 3rd one, all I'm going to say is they're called the Clare. Okay? Read the 3rd book. 2nd book. Yeah, sorry. So he goes on and talks about the great stones. Roger came, said there was something amiss there. They're down underneath the palace and such. Skipping a little bit, there was several wrong down there, but it was Roger's doing, page 300, not his discovery. That is, he acts like I've discovered a problem. Turns out he created the problem. 6 great stones, 2 were just being broken with the blood of his own sisters. So, kinslaying is really never good in any culture. It's just not acceptable. Broken with the blood of his own sister, sacrificed by his free magic minions as we approached. I saw their last seconds, faint hope in their clouding eyes as the queen's barge came floating across the water. All right. Sabriel says, so the story you told me at Whole Hallow wasn't true. Queen didn't survive. No, but I didn't mean to lie. It was all jumbled up in my head. In other words, cut me some slack. I just woke up from a 200 years, forced sleep, essentially. The other 2 guards were Rogier's men. Okay, what is he keeping from her still? Why he's a fool? Louder. Yeah, that he's one of the 4 children. Okay. They attacked me, but one of the ladies in waiting threw herself across them. I went mad, battle mad, berserk. Berserk is an Old Norse term, Viking term essentially, that means bear shirt. When an Old Norse, when a Viking warrior went berserker, that doesn't mean he took off his clothes and put on a bear shirt. It means he transformed, not literally, metaphorically. He entered or had battle frenzy enter him. Pretty much anybody around that individual is going to be killed. So if you're a friend of somebody who's gone berserker, you don't go tap them on the shoulder because you're going to lose your head. All right? So he killed both guards. Roger had jumped from the barge, etc., etc. I threw my sword. It flew straight and true, taking him just above the heart. He screamed, transfixed by my blood, blah, blah, blah. When I came to, I was in Whole Hollow seeing your face. So the last thing he remembers is seeing his mom, his two sisters, die. Okay? Sabriel, you should have told me. What's the problem with that statement? He couldn't. It took being out in the open sea to enable him to tell her. So, but perhaps the sea's freeing. Okay, the guy with the bells. Abhorsen? I don't know. Probably. Who else uses the bells? In here, okay? Necromancers. Sabriel, definitely I would say. And then she looked at Margaret. You were there too, weren't you? In other words, you knew, but you didn't tell me. Unbound in your other form. What does she mean by his other form?
Without the bell.
The real form. The real you was there. Yes, I was there. With the Abhorsen of that time, a very powerful charter mage. Master of the bells, but a little too good-hearted to deal with treachery. How? Is it naive? Or naivete? In the Harry Potter stories, in the 4th book, the false Mad-Eye Moody says to Harry, decent people are so easy to trick. Why? Because they expect other people to be decent. I think that's what he means about the Abhorsen. The Abhorsen of that time wasn't what? Louder?
It wasn't Sabriel's time.
No, obviously it wasn't Sabriel's dad. He's not that old. Wasn't that old. What else? Cutthroat. Mogget's kind of saying, you know, you're going to wear the bells and swing the sword. You better be cutthroat. You better be ready to deal with treachery. How? Viciously. You just take care of it. I had terrible trouble getting him to Belisarion, and in the end, we're not timely enough. Touched him. What happened? Notice, I don't know. Tell me now, after all these years. Roger was already one of the dead when he came back to Belisarion. Okay, when did he come back to Belisarion? Well, Touchstone's comments were, he'd gone off for several years and then came back. When he came back, that wasn't really Roger. Roger really was where? His body was somewhere else, which we find out at the end of this. Okay? But only an Abhorsen would have known it. He wasn't there. That is, Abhorsen wasn't at Belisarion when Roger came back. Otherwise, he would have stopped everything that happened with the Queen and such. Roger's real body was hidden somewhere. Is hidden somewhere, notice. And as long as the body is hidden somewhere, what can happen? He can keep coming back. Now, this book was first published in 1995. J.K. Rowling first publishes Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Philosopher's Stone, real title, in 1997. She doesn't publish the 7th book in the Harry Potter series until 2007. How many of you have read all of the Harry Potter books? A few of you have. So what does Harry have to do in book 7?
Restore all the Horcruxes.
Because what do the Horcruxes do?
Keep Voldemort alive. Well, keep him from being killed. Rather.
Keep him from being killed. Okay. Notice what Nix has just said here. You can't kill Roger. You can't get rid of the Roger that's there, so to speak, until you do what? Until you take care of his body. I've kind of wondered, because I first got this, I don't know, I think it's after the final Harry Potter book came out. And I remember reading this going, I wonder if she's familiar with this. Because it's kind of like she takes an idea from here, modifies it, changes it, uses it in her own work. Okay. He wore a free magic construct for his physical form. Somewhere along the path of his studies, it's the same kind of language Voldemort uses when he has a little interview with Dumbledore in book 6, Memory. Somewhere along the path of his studies, he'd swapped real life for power. And like all the dead, he needed to take life all the time to stay out of death. That is, in order to not really die. But the charter made it very difficult for him to do that anywhere in the kingdom. So he decided to break the charter. If he can break the charter, then he won't what? Die. Voldemort. He will flee from death, kind of a thing. He could have confined himself to breaking a few of the lesser stones somewhere far away, but that would have given him only a tiny area to prey on. Okay, so no, he was gonna go aim big stones, great stones, and for that he needed royal blood, his own family's, or Abhorson's, or the Clares. So Mogget says he almost won. The queen and her daughters were killed. Abhorson intervened a little too late. True, he did drive him deep into death, but since his true body has never been found, Roger has continued to exist. Find the body, take care of it. If an Abhorson can do what with that body? Send it into death. Then he'll be gone. Even from death, he's overseen the dissolution of the kingdom. That is, everything that's happened in the last 200 years has happened because of Touchstone's brother. He wasn't really beaten that night in the reservoir, just delayed. And he's been trying to come back, trying to re-enter life. Again, the more I read this, the more I think J.K. Rowling got a pretty good chunk of her ideas from it, but she modifies it. So it's not plagiarism, per se. Sabriel, he succeeded, hasn't he? He's Caragor. The one Abhorsons have been fighting for generations, trying to keep in death. He's the one who came back. The greater dead who murdered the patrol, the master of the Mordecamp, Mogget. I don't know. Your father thought so. Touchstone, it is. And notice, Touchstone then offers kind of the proof. Caragor was Roger's childhood nickname. So if he's using that now, I made it up on the day we had the mud fight. His full ceremonial name was Roger Ick. Go backwards. Mirror of Erised, Mirror of Desire. Same kind of thing. He or his servants must have lured my father to Belisar just before he emerged from death. So, she wonders, why did he come out so near the wall? Mogget, his body must be near the wall. So, what should they do at this point? If his body's near the wall, and they know to deal with Caragor, what must they do? Find the body and take care of it. Shouldn't they head back to the wall? Yes, that's what they should do. Instead, what does Sabriel think her mission is? Save her father. Okay. To renew the master spell that prevents him from ever passing beyond the final gate. She says yes, and she thinks of the Book of the Dead. But first we must find my father's body. Touchstone wipes his hands across his eyes, looks at Mogget, 306, and says, one more question. Put my spirit in death and made my body the figurehead? No idea, Mogget says. His green eyes met Touchstone's gaze, and it wasn't the cat who blinked, but it must have been Abhorsen. You were insane when we got you out of the reservoir, driven mad probably by the breaking of the great stones. No memory, nothing. Seems 200 years is not too long for a rescuer. He must have seen something in you, or the Claire saw something in the ice. That was hard. We're nearing the city. The binding resumes. Sabriel, no. Well, you should have stopped. I need to know, what's your connection? He goes, too late. It'd be useful to know this connection before the final third of the book, especially before about the final that much. Okay? But they don't get it. So they go on to Belissaire, and notice the city is relatively normal, like a regular city. Except what? What do people do at night? Louder. Scavenge. What else? What are the children doing? They're being used, right? For gangs. Let's go to 320. Sabriel says, my father's body's probably at the reservoir. That is, that big pool underneath the palace where the queen was slain. Where is that? Under the palace. Several ways to enter, all lie beyond this aqueduct guarded valley. Okay, aqueduct guarded valley. Flowing water keeps the dead away. Mogget says, yeah, you're probably right, but that's also going to be the worst place for us to go to, the most dangerous. Charter magic will be greatly warped, including bindings, etc. There's a chance our enemy, Caragor, but he may not be there. We might be able to sneak in. Okay, Touchstone's like, yeah, possibly. So, let's skip a bit more. And pick up 332. Sabriel tells Touchstone. Let's see if I need to go back up. On 332, you don't have to come, you know. As they make their way to the cave that gives them the steps down, he looked scared, much whiter than he should, almost as pale as a death-leeched necromancer. He'd seen terrible things in the reservoir, things that had once driven him mad. Despite his self-accusation, Sabriel didn't believe it was his fault. It wasn't his father down there. He wasn't an Abhorsen. Touchstone. No, I do. Why? Why does he have to go? To redeem himself? One reason. What will psychologists sometimes say about fear? What do you have to do to overcome it? You got to face it. Okay? I have to. Why? I'll never be free of my memories. Notice, his memories are like Mogget's collar. They're binding him. The only way he can get rid of them is to do what? Replace them. Okay? To replace them with different memories. To cancel them out, essentially. I have to do something, make new memories, better ones. I need to seek redemption. Did he kill the queen? Or his two sisters? Nope. But does he feel like he did? Why? Is he borrowing trouble? He convinced the queen to go down. Besides, oh yeah, I'm still on guard duty. Just because I was dead for 200 years doesn't, remove me from that. Sabriel says, okay, all right. Anyway, glad you're here. What might be one reason Sabriel's glad he's there? Okay, she's scared. The cat, so to speak. Why else?
He was powerful.
How do we know?
She said as much.
Okay. How else?
Yeah.
Back in the hut. Okay. When he put his hand on her shoulder so that she could repel that dead thing. Mogget, I'm not, but let's go on anyways. Why is Mogget not? Well, it's because of you. Essentially, all this started in the first place if you hadn't convinced your mother. So, they make their way down, and we're told 333. She smelled the reservoir before she saw it, somewhere around the 39th step. There's an old movie, 1930s. I want to say it's 39 or so, called The 39th Step. It's a kind of a cloak and dagger spy movie, and I just kind of wonder if Garth Nix is familiar with that, because it kind of has the right feel for this. A chill, damp smell that cut into her nose and lungs and filled her with the impression of a cold expanse. The steps end in a doorway, and there's a big rectangular hall. Giant chambers, stone columns rise up like a forest to support a roof 60 feet above her head. Okay? But the water is like a sheet of glass, just still. No movement at all. Touchstone tells her it's about waist deep. If you're going to slip into it, do so quietly as possible. I'll take your candle. She goes, okay. It's cold, but not unbearable. Why quietly as possible? You don't want to wake the dead? Okay. Sabriel gets in, and she immediately starts to feel sick to her stomach, and she says it's the broken stones. I can stand it, but be careful. She pulls her sword out, takes the candle back from Touchstone. He gets in. Sweat breaks out. Okay. Mogget drapes himself around Touchstone's neck, and they go in. Okay. And while they're down there, they notice it darkens briefly because there are light shafts down into the reservoir or into the hall, shafts that are exposed straight to the sky above. Okay. And he says, clouds. Clouds must have gone over the sun. That's why it just got darker. It'll pass. Only problem is sometimes clouds don't pass, right? They get bigger and darker, etc., which means everything beneath the sun, everything beneath the clouds gets darker. Here they want what? As much light as possible. Okay? So, the cloud does pass by. When sunlight came pouring back down, 337 at the top, relieved, they began to wait again, following the long east-west wall. So, the reservoir seemed colder without the sun, even a sun diluted by passage down long shafts through the earth. Sabriel felt the cold now, because clouds come and they go, and every time the clouds come, they kind of pause. And she goes, and there's a diamond kind of light in the middle of the reservoir. 338. Sabriel suddenly stopped, Touchstone lifting his sword and candle, eyes searching for an attack. But there was no enemy present. The luminous light came from a diamond of protection. The 4 cardinal marks glowing under the water, north, south, east, west. Lines of 4 sparkling between them. In the middle of the diamond, a man-shaped figure stood, empty hands outstretched, as if he had once held weapons. Frost rimed his clothes and face, obscuring his features. Ice girdled the water around his middle. Sabriel says, Father. So notice, body's not dead. Frozen, yes. Okay. But you're told the ice is around the middle. His whole body is covered in a layer of frost or ice, but where it touches the water is frozen slightly around. Touchstone. We can't move him because of the diamond of protection. She goes, I know. I'm going to have to go into death from here. That is, we'll have to make our own diamond of protection, and I will connect with him in death to bring him back. Here? Touchstone. Are you crazy? If we cast our... That will keep most danger at bay. Touchstone. Most danger. Yeah. It'll also do what? Trap us. It will trap us here even if we can cast it so close to the broken stones. I couldn't do it alone. Well, we could combine our strengths. And then maybe you and Maga can keep watch. Maga, I have my own troubles. I think this is a trap. But since we're here and the Abhorsen Emeritus, let's try. Touchstone doesn't like it. Okay? So, they make the diamond of protection. And 342 and 43. Notice it doesn't come easily. 345. Touchstone's kind of surprised that they were able to do it. And she looks at him, rather startled, and he found himself staring at the reflection of his candle flame in her dark eyes. Almost for the first time, he really looked at her. He saw the weariness there, the incipient lines of care, the way her mouth looked a little sad around the edges. Her nose was still swollen. There were yellowing bruises on her cheekbones. Where are these from? The paper wing crash. Okay. She was also beautiful. Touchstone notices this now and realized that he had thought of her only in terms of her office as Abhorsen, not as a woman at all. She says, I'd better be going. She starts to finger the bells and stuff. Touchstone says, let me help. Fumbling with the stiff leather, hands weakened by the effort spent on the diamond, his head bent over the bells. Sabriel looked down on his hair, was strangely tempted to kiss the exact center, a tiny part marking the epicenter where his tight brown curls radiated outwards, but she didn't. So, he notices her as a woman for the first time. Well, she's already seen, he's a man, when he was the figurehead on the ship and such. If the roles had been reversed, if she had been the figurehead and he'd been the one rescuing her, I don't think he'd have forgotten that she's a woman. Okay? But he's not seen her in that way that she's seen him. She can't forget that about him. He says, it probably won't be a long wait for you. Time moves strangely in death. She says, won't be a long wait. Time moves strangely in death. If I'm not back in 2 hours, I'm trapped too. Leave. If I'm not back in 2 hours, abandon me. Okay. She's saying this to a man who lost his mother and sisters and brother. Okay, the brother was lost a lot longer, but still. And she's telling him to abandon me. For 200 years. Okay, he's now come back. Do you really think he's going to? No. I'll be waiting, he says. In other words, if you get stuck, I'll be here. It might be another 200 years, but I'll be here. Who knows what time it is down here anyways. Maga, and I'll wait unless I want to swim out of here, cat, water, which I don't. May the charter be with you. I mean, it's not May the 4th, but it may as well be. Maga, we'll need it to be with us one way or another. So, Touchstone kisses her on the cheek. For luck, he says. She smiles and goes into death. Let's see here. We can skip that. She searches for her father in the first gate, first precinct. He's not there. Second gate, big hole. She goes through it. There's a funny sound, something following her, page 350. The thing she'd hit stepped back, its head hanging from a mostly severed neck, humanoid in shape, at least to begin with, arms trailed down below its knees into the river, flaming coals in its eyes. It came from beyond the fifth gate, it snarls, etc. She takes care of it. Let's see. Keep going on. Meanwhile, back at the top, back in life, it's not that one is below necessarily, Touchstone stares out, and there's a dripping sound. And he asks Mogget, can you see anything? Mogget, yes, the dead. Many of them, filing out of the main southern stair. They're lining up each side of the door along the reservoir walls. So, you've got, the reservoir, remember, is a rectangle. It's not a square. Let's assume this is north, east, south, west. And I don't remember which stair. Is it, which wall is it? Anybody remember? Southern stair? Okay, so here. So you got the stairway here, and they're coming out and doing what? Lining up like that. Mogget, and I don't know how the 6 stones are, probably something like that. Mogget in Mogget and Touchstone, let's say, are here. Okay? So the dead are coming out, and they're not just lining up here. I mean, they kind of file so that they get circled or encircled. Touchstone. What kind of dead are they? Does it really matter? I mean, the fact that they're the dead. He didn't know much about the dead, except that shadow hands were the worst of the normal variety, and Mordecants, like the one that had followed Sabriel, were the worst of them. All except for what Roger had become, Caragor, the dead adept. Mogget. They're mostly hands. In other words, it does kind of matter because you have, the order of dead, the minor dead that can't do a lot of damage, they can do some, to the Mordecants, etc. That could really be a lot to handle. Okay? Mogget, they're falling apart just walking. In other words, we don't need to worry about these dead, the hands. The hands you can pretty much blow on, the head falls off, ear falls off, etc. The Mordecants are held together much better. So, Touchstone asks 355, what are they doing? Notice, he still can't see them. Why can Mogget? Cat? Cat's eyesight? Another reason? Yeah, free magic thingy, whatever that is. What are they doing? They're just lining up along the walls in ranks. Strange, like an honor guard. Like an honor guard. That implies somebody as powerful as in showing up. Charter Preservus, Roger Caragor, he must be here, and he's coming. Okay? Meanwhile, back in hell, or death if you want, she could feel her father's spirit now, 357, close by, as if he were in one room of a large house and she in another. Tracking him down with the slight sounds of habitation. He was either here in the 4th precinct, so she'd gone through the 3rd gate, or past the 4th gate in the 5th precinct. So, death, let's do it this way. Here's life. Death. You have 1 gate, 2 gate, 3 gate, 4 gate, 5, 6, 7, 8. Is there a gate after 9? Not that we find out here, but there is something after 9. Okay? Or 9 is the entrance to something, let's say. Okay? So he's not in the 4th precinct. So she's check these off. So she has to keep going. What's the danger?
The further you go in, the harder it is to get out.
Yeah, exactly. Not only because you are becoming more and more and more dead, so to speak, but each one of the gates, it's not just a simple little gate. You know, each one is a different thing, and it makes it more difficult to get through.
Don't the dead get like stronger the farther you get in?
Yes. Well, not only the dead, but there are other things there too. She halts. She's about to launch the spell that would conjure her path when she feels, like there's something watching her. Have you ever had that experience? You're off, you're by yourself, or you're one other person, and you just get the willies, like there's something nearby. Nevertheless, Sabriel felt an urge, page 358, to walk along next to the gate, to turn on her heel and follow the line of the waterfall. It's an unidentifiable urge. That is, she gets this compulsion, I ought to go, through the next gate. There were other things in death than the dead, inexplicable beings of free magic, strange constructs, incomprehensible forces. This urge might be one of them. Notice, we kind of think the urge or urges come from where? Inside. That there's something in us. She's saying, maybe this desire I have has come from outside and is spurring me on. Okay? Meanwhile, back in the reservoir, Touchstone says, what about the south where we came in? Mogget says they're coming down the east and west stairs. Filing up here, Touchstone. What about the south? The one we came in? Not yet. So they weren't coming in here. Huh. That stair ends in sunlight, remember? They'd have to go through the park. Can't be much sunlight, Touchstone says, looking at the shafts. Why? It's clouding over. When do you think he'll come? Soon. Told you it was a trap. So how do we get out? Well, somebody is still not with them, right? Sabriel's still Mogget. Don't think we can. I think it depends on Sabriel and her father. What can we do? Defend ourselves. Hope. Pray to the charter that Caragor doesn't come before Sabriel returns. What if he does? What if he does? Well, what happened last time? Notice, Mogget doesn't reply. 360. Sabriel had no idea how far she'd gone before she found him. That same niggling sensation. There he was, Abhorse and father, somehow imprisoned within the gate itself. Daddy's stuck. At first she thought he was unaware of her. Then a slight wink of one eye showed conscious perception. Notice, slight wink, one eye. Because the rest of him is bound. Not literally. She follows his gaze and saw something tall and shadowy thrust up through the waterfall, arms reaching up to pull itself out of the water. A dead humanoid, etc., etc. And the dead creature finally hauls itself out. She draws Sarnath and then Dirham, cocks her wrist, etc. And rings it, sends the dead thing on, and they speak. 363. We're not going to get as far as I want to. He says, I both hoped and feared you'd come. Father, father. She breaks down, starts to cry. He says, hush, we have no time for tears. Where's your body? In the reservoir next to yours. And the dead, Caragor. No sign of them there. We know Caragor somewhere in life. Okay. Abhorse and the other one, says, we must move quickly. Do you remember how to ring 2 bells simultaneously? Notice, do you remember how? Usually when we think, do you remember something, it means what? You've done it. It's an experience you had. Where is he asking, does she have the memory of? From the book, from reading the Book of the Dead. She had never even heard. Think, remember. It comes back, she goes, okay. Will they free you? Yeah, for a time. To do what must be done. She's thinking for a time means what? Yeah. Subconsciously, she had always been aware that Abhorsen's spirit had been too long from his body, too deep in the realm of death. He could never truly live again. So if he could never truly live again, and how long has he been here? 3 weeks? Well, his body, let's say. 3 weeks? 4 weeks, maybe? We're not giving an exact time frame, but probably not much more than that. Caragor. How long has his spirit been separated from his body? Well over 200 years, because he'd been gone for several years and then came back. So he can never really live again, not live by our understanding of the words. Okay? So, she does the bells, 365. At the same time, her father was emerging from the waterfall of the 4th gate. His head was freed first. He flexed his neck, then rolled his shoulders, raised his arms. Sabriel stepped on till she was only 2 paces from the rim, could look down into the swirling waters. Then he's free. He leaps forward, grabs the bells, silence. He says, once trapped, it was all I could do to send the bells and sword. Now I'm afraid we must hurry back to life before Caragor can complete his plan. Give me Saranath for now. No, you keep the sword, Rana, etc. So they start to make their way back. 367. She asks, what's happening? Why is all this going on? What is Caragor's plan? Why wasn't I brought up here? So I know. She doesn't mean here in death. She means here in the Old Kingdom. I must be the only Abhorsen ever who doesn't have a clue about how everything works. Why? Why? There's no simple answer. In other words, next question. Frodo, at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, asked Gandalf, why has the ring come to me? Why was I chosen? Why? Gandalf, such things can't be answered. Next question. But I sent you to Ancelstierre 2 reasons. Now notice we're getting this, not quite at the end, but almost at the end of the book. This is background information that we need. Got it? 1, I lost your mother, and the only way to keep you safe in the Old Kingdom was to keep you either with me or always at our house. Practically a prisoner. Couldn't keep you with me. Why? Because things were getting out of hand and I was having to go all over the Old Kingdom. The second reason was because the Clare advised me to do so. It's the second time we've heard them named. Okay? Mogget named him before when he said, maybe the Clare told Abhorsen what to do with you, Touchstone, by imprisoning your body and such. They said we needed someone, or we'll need someone, they're not good with time, who knows Ancelstierre. I don't know why. Then, didn't know why, but I suspect I do now. Why? Caragor's body. Or Rogers, to give him his original name. He could never be made truly dead because his body is preserved by free magic somewhere in life. Like an anchor, it always brings him back. So he says, the Clare will have located it by now because Caragor must have gone to it when he emerged into life. Okay, so you want me to do it? She's like, keep talking. The only problem is, if you read the next 2 books, yeah, the Clare aren't exact about where the body is. The Clare are never that clear, in other words. Okay? So, they run through the next gate, going back up, 369. Caragor could never be properly dealt with till an Abhorsen found the body. All of us pushed him back at various times as far as the 7th gate, but he keeps growing stronger. Who's we? The Great Chartered Bloodlines, which to all intents and purposes means Abhorsens and Clare. Why? Because the royal line is all but extinct. So he is saying that charter's gone, just because he's unaware of recent events. It talks about the relic of the wall maker, sort of construct left over after you put their powers in the wall and the great stones. We'll just leave that hanging. We have the chance to finish Caragor once and for all, bottom at 370. 371. 370, he mentions a surviving royal prince out of his suspended state. She goes, he wasn't by any chance on a ship in Hullhallow, was he? He says, yeah, actually, bastard son, etc., etc. She tells him about the prince, where he is, and he's with Mogget. 371. All our plans go astray. Caragor lured me to the reservoir to use my blood to break a great stone, but I managed to protect myself. He thought you would be lured to my body. He could use your blood. Worked. She's there. But I was not trapped as securely as he thought, planned to reverse. Now, if the prince is there, he can use his body to break the rest of the stones. All right? He's in a diamond of protection, she says. Might not be enough. Abhorsen, the original, asks who is Mogget. Free magic something or other. At the house. Yeah, that's the wallmaker relic, he says. Or their last creation, or their child, no one really knows. I wonder why he took the shape of a cat. He used to be an albino dwarf boy to me, practically never left the house. Suppose he may be some sort of protection for the prince. So, a relic. What is a relic? Not a relic. Like a leftover thing. Surplus goods from the making of the wall. Now, we know the wall is very, very powerful. So if whatever Mogget is something left over from that, then he is also, obviously, very, very powerful. Okay? So, they keep going. She's thinking, I want you to be my father, etc., etc. And he realizes what she's thinking, 373, and says, I've not been an ideal parent. None of us ever are. Who's the none of us? He's not only talking about Abhorsens. Okay? Abhorsen said, none of us ever are. When we become the Abhorsen, we lose much else. Okay? But I think when he first says, none of us, he's saying, no parent is ever what? What the child expects a parent to be. No parent ever fills that ideal. How do we know? Because many of us grow up and become parents ourselves and realize, oops, failed you here, 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 etc. Usually when I go to confession, that's pretty much it. I failed my children, kind of a thing. He goes on. Abhorsens, however, they've got additional problems. Responsibility to many people rides roughshod over personal responsibilities. Imagine being president. Not of, like Trump, he's got an 11-year-old son. Imagine being president and having a 5, a 6, an 8, and a 9-year-old. What those 4 children wouldn't get. Okay, they get an awful lot, right? Air Force One free rides, the whole night, visits to every country. Totally cool. What wouldn't they get? Or mother, okay? Let's not be sexist. Responsibility to many people rides roughshod over personal responsibilities. Difficulties and enemies crush out softness. In other words, he says, the job makes us hard, makes us cold. It channels emotion away. Now I live again for only a short time. 100 heartbeats. 1,000 heartbeats. Not many minutes. And I must win a battle against a terrible enemy. In other words, and I don't have time to show you the love you deserve, need, want. That's why he says, you're my daughter. I always loved you. Love goes with the word daughter. He is saying, as a father, of course I love you. Our parts now, which perforce we must play, are not father and daughter. You got to deal with that, Sabriel. I can't be what you need me to be right now as it's wearing down. But behind all this, there's always my love. And she's like, 100. No, there's got to be more. Okay? Meanwhile, back in the reservoir, Touchstone's sitting there thinking, yeah, well, it's going to come. It's just a delay. My death was just delayed by 200 years. See anything else? He goes, yeah, tall beast. Yeah, Mordecant. Fog's coming down the stairs. Now, that's a nice trick. I mean, Karagor understands the whole idea of presentation, you know. It's like Megamind, if you're familiar with that. Roger always was flamboyant. He liked everyone to be looking at him. Okay? Well, when he comes in, what does Roger look like? Yeah, okay, so describe disgusting, because we might have different opinions of disgusting.
Totally disgusting.
Okay. Kind of like that? Well, not really, not in the reservoir. Like somebody had a vague idea of what a human looks like and took parts from a variety of corpses. And, you know, it's like Mr. Potato Head. Takes an ear and sticks it on, takes an eye and sticks it on, but does it, you know, with a blind person, putting the pieces together. We'll just stop there. We'll pick up around 379 and finish this on Wednesday. So, because we'll finish it, expect a quiz.